Good afternoon. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reed. Here's my co-host, Dave Bernstein. Hey, Dave.
Hey, there's lots of bad news out there, so we like to begin with some of the positive stuff. And
Okay.
there's a good one. What did you see on that chart, Stu, about cancer deaths?
An incredible decrease. I'm looking at a cancer death graph that's graphing the rate of cancer deaths from 1960 to 2020, approximately a 60-year period. And I'm saying for the United States, it dropped nearly in half from about 120 deaths per 100,000 to about 65. And for some other countries like Japan and Korea, the decline was even more precipitous. Korea is down under 50, something like 45 deaths per 100,000, dropping from a high of about over 100 just 20 years ago. So the chart I'm looking at, Dave, shows us UK, USA, Canada, Japan, Switzerland, and Korea. And all of those nations have a tremendous drop in cancer deaths just over the last 20 years, from the year 2000 to the year 2020. So that's pretty incredible news.
Let me explain some of what's behind what you're seeing. I
Okay.
follow medical news. The first part of that was there's a lot less tobacco smoking around the world, and particularly in the United States. And lung cancer is all the way down. Everything like cleaner air also helps reduce the cancer rate. But in the last 10 years in particular, medicine has been making enormous advances. The death rate from breast cancer has gone down from 50% to 20%.
Mhm.
That's still too high, but that's the kind of progress we're making. Up and down the line, I can name you 6 or 7 major breakthroughs in cancer treatment, each of which helps only some people. But there's definitely about a third fewer. Now, Stu, can you think why America's rate is so much higher than Switzerland's and Korea, which are basically the same genes around the world?
I'd be guessing, Dave. I would say one would probably be diet, the food that we eat here. A lot of processed food in this country, and I suspect not nearly so much in a place like Korea and Switzerland. I would think that's got to be a huge factor.
Uh, and it's probably not the quantity of chocolate that they eat in Switzerland. One was in Geneva, I went to the supermarket. They had a whole aisle full of different kinds of chocolate, and that's great. Uh, Poverty turns out to be a major thing. Poor people, possibly related to diet, possibly related to the quality of care, have more cancers or more likely to die of cancer than rich people who can afford a better diet and healthier food
Yeah.
and the best doctors.
Mhm.
Now, the thing that all of us should do is make sure we have a good doctor who's on top of things. 50 years ago, medicine was changing rapidly. The last 10 or 15 years, it's gone to incredibly rapidly. And we're seeing it in the rate of deaths from cancer and heart disease. That's great. We are seeing something that is a terrible indictment of the incredibly expensive US healthcare system. We should not have a big difference in the death rate with countries that are no richer than we are spend half what we have on medical care, do not have more doctors. The bad news related to this one, the numbers you saw were also in the fairly developed countries. The numbers in poor countries haven't moved nearly as much. And that's why we talk about equity and making sure that these advances, heck, we've mostly cured AIDS, get to everybody. That's, well, something you can take yourself. Second one, which I'm not going to go into any depth, because I don't have depth in it, but the latest news, they may have broken through on Huntington's disease. It's a small study. It's early, but it's really dramatic.
Well, that's a genetic therapy application. Is that right, Dave?
Let me get it to you precisely. This is from the New Scientist article, but there's several others.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The findings are still preliminary. It could be a major breakthrough, and it may lead to therapies for other diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Huntington's is a terrible disease that leaves you shaking, ultimately unable to speak, and you die usually in a year or three. The treatment called AMT 130 targets abnormal proteins in the brain. Huntington's is one of the few diseases that's caused by a particular mutation. That's a single mutation. And they've known that for 25 years. And this is the first treatment that makes a difference. How much of a difference? After 3 years, again, only 23 patients, the rate of progression of Huntington's went down 70%.
Wow, that's huge, Dave. Even though that's a incredibly small sample, that's an incredibly large drop. Something's going on there.
And the reason I wanted to bring it to the air is if you know anybody with Huntington's or have any doubts about it, again, get yourself to a good doctor who is up on the latest treatments and can get you into the trials if that's what you need, and so on. Wonderful news in medicine, but you have a different story, Stu.
Yeah, that's great news about medicine. There's some not so great news about stuff going on in technology. Many folks may have heard, I think it was just last week, the FBI, acted as U.S. Secret Service, that busted a sim farm operation in the New York City area that included over 300 servers that were holding more than 100,000 SIM cards. Now, what this means, Dave, and this is something that I'm just learning about. You may have known about this possible technology threat, but apparently the SIM cards can send out text messages in a huge, huge volume and knock out the cell towers. This particular SIM card farm had the capability of sending out 30 million text messages per minute, meaning it can anonymously text the entire United States in 12 minutes. Forget about the communications disruption. The network disruption is incredible. Essentially, it can disable the cell towers and essentially shut down the cell phone network. Now, they're not sure who did this. The Secret Service seized the equipment. They said it was all being held within 35 miles of Midtown Manhattan. Now, when the story broke, Dave, they also tied it to the fact that the UN was in session. And there was, speculation, granted speculation, that somehow the threat may have been tied in a political way to that.
Oh,
Now,
let me take that from you.
okay, go
Let me
ahead.
take that from you. What would it have done? Well, Maybe it knocked out the communication system at the UN, which, according to Donald Trump, was sabotaged so that he was stuck on the elevator in the UN when he went to make his speech.
Oh, this is the Trump. Okay.
Well, is that what happened, or is it just an ordinary elevator sometimes stick? Or was it that some UN employee who hated Donald Trump went into the control room? I have no idea. It almost certainly was not related to this SIM card. But that's millions of dollars of equipment sitting there with what the equivalent of cell phones, or what you can, and takeaway. First, it is trivial to clone a SIM card. So there's a lot of fraud, and there's always going to be a lot of fraud. Second, that one looks like, because it was so expensive, and frankly so dangerous for the host because it would have been easy to track down, it probably was a government wanting to affect the American phone system. Okay. These things happen. I thought when you told me about a SIM card story, I thought you were going to tell me about the one in Thailand where people were cloning SIM cards and using them for fraud.
Well,
So it does.
it's interesting, Dave. This may just be spin, but the Secret Service is saying that they think it's more likely that it was cyber crime motivated than political. Don't know if that's really true. Uh,
Definitely getting more spam these days,
mhm,
but they didn't need to put it in New York to do that, so that doesn't sound likely to me, but none of us knows yet.
mhm.
Let's go to the new Facebook glasses, which have the Ray-Ban trade name on it. Have you seen what's happening there?
No, I haven't. I saw the headline in the story that they're used to ID people. Is that right?
Yep.
How does that work, Dave?
Well, I could walk down the street and have my glasses tell me who the person who walked past me is. For real. What's involved? The Meta Ray-Bans have a camera built in,
Hmm.
so that you can take pictures, including motion pictures, anytime. The new announcement, I don't think they're shipping them yet, is that they're adding a fairly robust internet connection. Well, a couple of kids at Harvard got their hands on it and used that interconnection to hook up to facial recognition software so that you could stop on the street and identify almost everybody who's gone by.
Now, Dave, they'd have to have not just the software, but they'd have to have access to a huge database, wouldn't they? Of,
There's
who
several of those
who does this
available
face belong
commercially,
to?
being used by 2,000 police departments in the United States routinely,
Hmm.
being used by the Immigration and Customs. And we've had that story about how facial recognition works 90+% of the time. It's getting better and better every day. And, well, competent countries are usually making it illegal. Not the United States, which means any of us can go out there and figure out who's in Times Square,
Hmm.
who's in a demonstration, who parked their car in front of your ex-spouse and maybe
Wow.
visiting them.
Wow.
Or what we can tell you, we can't tell you right or wrong, We can tell you the technology works real well.
Yeah. But now, Dave, back to these glasses. So do the glasses speak to you and tell you who the person is? What are the mechanics of that?
You have to have a cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
but almost everybody does.
Right.
And they are, I actually don't know. I looked at the announcement, but I didn't look so closely because I couldn't buy them yet. Uh, they're only 300, they're $300 to $700. They do come to you. I maybe sound via bone connection by your ear and you can hear it, or maybe they have, I think in the $700 one, they have a screen projected in front of your eye,
Mm.
which is what's in the
Oh wow.
$3,500
Wow.
Apple VR system, which is wonderful if only it wasn't $3,500.
Right. So they project the name out in front of on the glasses so that you can visually read the name of who you're looking at.
I don't know. I'll look it up at the break.
Okay.
Now
Well,
have to answer
Dave,
for you.
that'd help a guy like me who's terrible on remembering people's names. I know that's a pretty trivial use of that, but
No, it's not.
mhm.
That's absolutely crucial to any competent politician.
Okay, there you
One of
go.
the things you teach somebody who wants to go into politics
Right.
is that when you meet somebody, you shake their hand, you look in their eye, and you repeat their name, which makes you more likely to remember it. And then if
Mhm.
you ever see it again, your aide hopefully has told you who's at this meeting so that you can say them and ask them questions about the kid they have.
Okay, there you go. Wow.
That's what any competent politician does.
Hmm.
Okay, let's go around the world. Nepal.
Yeah, what's going on over there? They just had a big uprising related to social media ban, Dave. Is that what do they do over there?
Well, the straw that broke the camel's back, as it's put, was when the government banned Facebook, TikTok, and so on because they didn't like what was coming over the internet.
They totally banned it?
Afghanistan
Totally shut it down?
totally shut it down.
Wow.
Afghanistan has totally shut down the entire internet this week.
Afghanistan
Uh,
did?
yeah,
Wow.
Taliban, and they obviously have moral uh, disagreements with much of what's on the internet. Nepal is a story that's historically important. So everybody, not everybody, but tens of thousands of people went on the streets when the government banned many of the popular internet services.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, that was probably not particularly because of the internet ban, but it's going to make it harder and harder for any government anywhere to tell Facebook or Elon Musk or Microsoft or any of the internet giants what's legal and what's illegal.
Wait, now
Whether
how's this going to make it harder, Dave? Are you talking about just because of the popular reaction?
because
What's the
that
linkage there?
anybody competent, most people didn't notice this story. After all, it was over in Nepal. It's only 30 people got killed
Mm.
and over 100 injured. But anybody understanding technology is going to hear about this and know it. And it's going to make the government, it gives Facebook the ability to carry out the threat they made against Australia a few months ago. Australia put a tax on Facebook. Facebook says if you do that, we're going to shut down Facebook in Australia. And knowing the kind of feedback they'd get, the Australian government mostly backed down. The Russian government generally allows Facebook and TikTok and things like that because they know the Russian people are so addicted Addiction to Facebook is something that's a whole nother story. But we got a whole lot today. But this is going to make it very hard. Say the United States decided we wanted to shut down all the propaganda aimed at let's take a different kind of example. How you should use open source software instead of the big US companies, because the Europeans want something that they can understand what's going on, and they don't want Microsoft surveilling the entire internet. Will that happen? Probably not. But if it did, the US would be very hard to shut down the European services, because we saw that people in the street in Nepal took over. Not merely took over, they have a new prime minister, and for a while, the major discussion on who should be the new prime minister and what should the government be happened on Discord, a messaging service that a lot of geeks use. 45,000 Nepalese signed on to Discord.
Wow.
And the discussion there was the main forum to figure out who should be the next prime minister and other basic legal institutions.
Wow, that's a
Great
huge impact.
democracy.
That's huge. That's a huge impact for social media to be involved like that in the political process out front.
After the break, I'm going to talk about things like compatibility of software to make that kind of thing more practical.
Hmm.
How much time do we have before the break?
We've got about 2 minutes before we need to break, Dave.
Okay. Very quickly, a couple of stories that we're not really going to get to. We just saw what may have been the largest bribe in history. The newspapers had Trump forcing the Chinese to sell 80% of TikTok to his friend Larry Ellison and some folks like that for $14 billion. When Stu heard this, he told me, that's a lot. No way. The finance people have looked at what TikTok was worth, looking at things like how much Facebook is valued, that has a simple network, how much Snap is valued, and came up with numbers that it should have been 30 billion to 100 billion. Favor that Trump forced the Chinese or persuaded the Chinese to give to his friends. I'm calling it a bribe. And there's a story in the Journal of the Times yesterday about how there's a big deal happening, and they with China. They're talking about trade. The Chinese may have gone along with this because it's part of a big deal coming down.
Okay, Dave, let me just be clear. Two things. One, China's given up control of TikTok.
Yeah,
Secondly,
80%.
it sounds like you're saying that the venture was very undervalued in terms of the price that Larry Ellison and the U.S. paid. Is that also part of what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Based on a lot of people who ran the numbers and said that price is ridiculously low. Ellison was the richest man in the world a couple of weeks ago for a few hours. His stock went up while Elon Musk's stock went down. They're buying his son with his money is buying Paramount Pictures, which I think CBS TV, and is trying to take over HBO and CNN and a number of other networks. We know the power of Murdoch to influence opinion. Without Rupert Murdoch's
Fox Network.
Fox Network, Donald Trump would not have been elected.
Yeah.
It was a close election, so something like that was enough to swing it. And we're watching the media being taken over by people with a particular point of view. Elon Musk, now, who owns TikTok now? No, who owns Twitter, TikTok, and several others. That's a big story. We
Yeah,
don't have
and
time to
just
talk
corollary,
about.
not to sidetrack you, but I understand there's also some regulation changes in front of the FCC that's going to enable an even larger concentration of television ownership in individual markets. Historically, one company could not dominate any given market, but
Yeah,
the
there was
FCC and the
quotas
Trump
that
administration
I
is trying to
think were
knock that down.
30% of the U.S., which is why CBS works through local stations. Now, it's important to note that who are these local stations? The biggest in outfit is Sinclair Broadcasting,
Hmm.
very conservative ownership. When Letterman was thrown off,
Kimmel,
Letterman?
Kimmel.
Kimmel was thrown off the air. I don't watch
Mhm.
really about TV. Was thrown off the air because Trump demanded it. One of the reasons was that Sinclair, which owns something like 15 or 20% of the stations involved, demanded it. They brought Kimmel back last night, but not on Sinclair broadcast stations.
Mhm. But then I think
So
Sinclair eventually capitulated, but still, the whole point is that the media concentration is tremendous, and the FCC is about to enable it to be even more concentrated. But Dave, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to
before we
talk.
take a break, give me 30 seconds because this is a good one.
Okay, go ahead.
New world class large language model out of China, comparable to ChatGPT. Its name, The Dark Side of the Moon, like the Pink Floyd song. The fellow who owns that company, who came to America for graduate school, loves British rock, and made that the name of the company in Chinese. The English name they're using is Moonshot.ai.
Hmm.
But well, I don't know. I don't know if Stu's going to be able to find Pink Floyd to play at the break, but that's quite a name for a world-class company.
Dark Side of the Moon. Okay. Okay, you're listening to Dave Bernstein and Stu Reed on Community and Technology on WHR 90.3 FM. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break. Okay, we're back. Community and Technology, Dave Burstein and Stu Reed. Dave, before the break, we are talking a little bit about the new Meta's new glasses, Ray-Ban glasses that allow you to automatically identify people that you see. I know you did a little bit of research during the break. How does that work? And how do you know, how does it communicate that information to you?
Okay, I could stand on my street corner across from Columbia University, where they've had some marches lately, and identify the name of 9 out of 10 of the people in that march in Times Square when I'm in Times Square, jumping over a subway turnstile, and so on. Facial recognition massively being used, including by ICE, who were arresting a lot of people, most of whom did nothing seriously wrong. We just sent a plane full to Iran, where a country that we say is a terrorist government, and they were fleeing as refugees.
Wow.
Facial recognition is routine, being used by police all over the place, being used by the federal government. It works. You now can do it on a pair of glasses from Meta for $800. What they do is that the glasses have a camera in them, and what I had to check before, a small display that will let you and Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to connect via your cell phone to the internet, and then to one of several services that have billions of pictures and faces that are recognized, and tell you the names of the people on the street that you see.
Wow.
I think I don't have to say anything more about that because you all can realize the consequences of something like that.
Yeah, I mean, tie that to law enforcement and the stuff that agency like ICE is doing, and it's, terrifying. I mean, they're walking down the street and identifying folks left and right and tying it to whatever other databases they may have. Wow, that's
And
a
you
little
can,
frightening.
and how do we know this works? Well, a couple of Harvard kids made an app and did it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
straightforward. Very quickly, because we just don't have the time, and there's some things I want to get to. $5 billion in Bitcoin, actually $4.7 billion in Bitcoin, were seized by the British government from a Chinese national accused of money laundering. Well, the money they laundered, why was that Chinese national in England? Well, she had run a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme
Hmm.
and used Bitcoin to move the money out of China.
Wow.
Bitcoin is a very powerful tool for ransomware and other things.
So, I mean,
Ransom,
did they dig down any further as to what she was actually doing, Dave? I mean, what was her illegal gimmick? What was she doing?
oh no, she had a heavy duty Ponzi scheme that has been in the Chinese press for months. In
Okay.
fact, it was in the time I got this story right now from the Times of London, and there was a story about her Ponzi scheme a year ago. So the Ponzi scheme was well known.
Hmm.
Probably not as big as what's his name on Wall Street that got caught a few years ago?
Oh, the guy that built that huge fortune and had nothing in the bank.
45 billion or so.
I'm blanking on his name, but I
Matt,
know who you're talking about.
not Maddox, it was something like that. Well, whichever. This is that kind of thing is happening with Bitcoin, and it's being used for hundreds of millions of dollars of ransoms. There is a worldwide set of ransom bandits who hack into computers of things like a German hospital chain, demanding an enormous ransom paid in Bitcoin, literally in one case over $100 million, because otherwise they're down. Heathrow Airport, one of the busiest airports in the world, was larger because they couldn't handle the login. They couldn't use their computers to ID the people coming presenting their tickets.
Now, Dave, the reason these ransomware bandits, if you will, are using Bitcoin is what? That the Bitcoins are easier to manipulate and transfer without being traced. Is that it? It doesn't have to go through any central bank or any clearinghouse. Is that the reason, or why is that?
That's the reason, because people think Bitcoins are totally anonymous. That's actually not always true. And in fact, the US government caught a few hundred million dollars worth of Bitcoin that was stolen, because to move Bitcoin, you're usually using one of several services, and there are ways to use that information sometimes. So Bitcoin is not guaranteed safe, but
They use nevertheless.
yeah, it's hard to crack.
Now,
Now,
$5 billion, that's a big Ponzi scheme, man. That's 4.7 billion. That's a lot of money.
yeah. Now, what's 1% of the total turnover of the British Broadcasting Company? Well, I know it's in the millions, and I know it's in the hundreds of millions, and I think it may be a couple of billion. A ransomware gang reached a reporter at the BBC and offered to pay him a very large sum of money if he used his credentials to help them get into the BBC and shut down the BBC.
So when you say get into it, well, I guess into the database, or you're not talking about physical access, you're talking about some sort of virtual access.
Virtual access, but that's where the shows come from.
Okay.
They're sitting up on a server now.
Hmm.
And they wanted to go to the BBC and get, and how much ransom would they want? 1% of the BBC's annual revenue, which I think is something like 20 million, would be something like $20 million. That's just a guess.
Hmm.
Then the guy didn't want to go along with it. He talked back and forth because it happened to be a reporter. And all of this is straight from the BBC. And to dissuade him, they said, we'll secretly give you enough money you will never have to work again. That 15% of what they collect, as I say, it probably was going to be something, they hoped for something like 20 or 30 million, would be given to this reporter if he just let them use his system to crack into the BBCs. In Brazil,
So what happened there, Dad? What happened?
the reporter took it and put it right on the air. And BBC was not cracked.
Okay.
You can go to the BBC website and Stu, you have it in front of you, this story. They did have a case in Brazil, which led to the loss of, well, that's because it got cut off. Led to ransoms, led to somebody hacking into a large corporation and pulling $100 million from their bank account and paid off one of the IT workers at that company. Again, BBC story. I
So, I mean, it sounds like they were apprehended if we got those kind of details on the scam. Is that the
It's
case?
not in the BBC story I have in front of me,
Okay.
but those numbers are straight out of the BBC story.
Mhm.
1% of
It's amazing, Dave, how bank robbery and theft has like really just evolved from a guy with a gun going into the bank, stick him up, fill the bag with money to now where it's virtual. You use your computer, you're going through portals, you're going through servers, and you download the money virtually, digitally, if you will, and no weapons, no face to face. I mean, it's just totally changed the face of theft.
and no woman bank robber who looks like Faye Dunaway,
Right.
who's in a very sexy movie about bank
Yeah.
robbery.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So now,
Yeah.
Dave,
Okay. Let me give you the next one.
okay.
Headline: Stronger safeguards for linked teen accounts. ChatGPT is now ready to monitor everything you have with your parents' approval and let the parents control your account. They're going to come up with some software to determine everybody under 18 and monitor all of them. Stu, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, Google has something that's going to watch all kids, if you will. As part of the parental control, they're rolling out enhanced safeguards for linked teen accounts. Now, of course, the parents and the teens have to connect the accounts, but once that happens, the teens will automatically get additional content protections, quote unquote, including reduced graphic content, viral challenges, sexual, romantic, or violent role play. All this is stuff that they're going to eliminate or somehow mitigate. And extreme beauty ideals. I don't know, I'm not sure what that means, but that's in their release.
The ideas they're putting in there, not for fat shaming, because some people have been urged in their eating habits to starve themselves to death, which is a major medical problem
Oh,
in
okay.
Germany.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, sexual,
Google,
in other
Google
words, if I
claims that
would
these safeguards were carefully reviewed by existing research to understand the teens' unique, quote unquote, developmental differences.
nonsense. These safeguards were designed to prevent Google getting in trouble with people who want to control what people under 18 do.
Yeah, and for people who want to sue the pants off of Google because of the things that people under 18 do. Uh, one of the downsides, a huge downside that's really I guess folks are going to start to talk about it, but imagine the data that's going to be collected on the kids by Google in terms of monitoring all their emails, monitoring all their social media inputs and outputs, and basically monitoring all their online activity to make sure they're quote unquote safe. Uh,
Google is already
Incredible
doing
amount
most of
of
that.
big brotherism.
And Google's doing most of that, and Facebook and Microsoft are trying to get into that game
Mhm.
really heavy.
Well,
Okay.
David, it is a big issue. I was on a call with folks, an international call with some folks from the Internet Society. Both, you and I are both members of the Internet Society, a global organization that is there to advocate open use of the internet. Anyway, this particular call was about teens and age restrictions for young people. And it's an incredibly complex issue. How do you make sure that, kids are not exposed to stuff that's inappropriate for their age? And how do you verify the age of who's watching? And, and all the ways that kids can, of course, get around those restrictions.
Stu, can we
And
save that for the next show?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
lot
it's
of to
amazing
go. There's
complex
one more I want to get in.
complex area. But yeah, Google is sticking their toes in the water with this parental control. We'll see where that goes. But yes, it's a huge issue.
Yeah, Ireland was threatening them with multi-million dollar and possibly billion-dollar fines. So
Hmm.
they're taking it seriously. Now,
Hmm.
Stu, there's been a lot of stuff coming out of Washington about possible dangers of Tylenol for pregnant women. What did you know? I have the original articles from the medical journals that were cited. What did you hear in the news?
I heard on the news, Trump came out and said, it's dangerous for pregnant women to take Tylenol and advocated against it. Of course, Tylenol vehemently denied that. And since then, it's come out that back in 2017, some 8 years ago, I think your headline is a $10 billion tweet, Dave. But in March of 2017, Tylenol tweeted, quote, "We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant," unquote.
Typical misleading information. Tylenol's label says talk to your doctor before using it in pregnancy. There was some staffer in 2017 who answered a question online, is it safe in pregnancy? And that staffer, not official policy, not true, not necessary, without evidence, said you shouldn't, or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So
So
that's
that
just,
was not an
but
official statement.
Trump has already been on his website putting that Tylenol quote out.
But Dave, where did that come from? I mean, to me, it seemed to come out of the blue that the president of the United States would come out and endorse or condemn a particular drug. Is that related to what's going on with the whole vaccine campaign and Department of Health and Kennedy, or where's that coming from?
I'll let you guys figure out the politics of this. You
Okay.
know that I believe there's a lot of incorrect information coming from Washington these days. All
Mhm.
governments lies. I've reported some of the things coming out of the Biden administration as well. But no, well, again, you guys can figure out the politics of this. What I have is the medical opinion.
Mhm.
The White House announcement cited two articles that did show a very weak association between autism and Tylenol. Definitely there. One of those articles, Dr. Lee, which appeared in the Journal of the American Medical Association a year ago, Dr. Lee, who was the senior man on that article that was cited by the White House, conducted, this is again, this is verbatim from JAMA, conducted in Sweden a survey that looked at 2.5 million pregnancies. Sweden has the health records. Well, let me give you the quote there. The mothers and their children were followed over 20 years, and we were able to do this using the National Computerized Registry System. That's another issue. What we found, it's actual part story, two-part story. The first part is when we looked at the children born to mothers who used Tylenol during pregnancy and compared them to the children born to mothers who didn't use Tylenol, we saw an apparent statistical association between Tylenol use and the risk of autism, attention deficit, and intellectual ability. Does that sound convincing to you, Stu?
No, it doesn't, Dave. Because, we've had this discussion before on our show. Association is not causation. and you don't know what underlying things may have been going on with the mothers that drove them to use the Tylenol in the first place. Some other health issues that may have impacted and be the actual causal factor for the attention deficit and autism.
Let
So
me, let
I
me
think
go,
it's fallacious to say that the Tylenol caused it. I don't think you can say that based on that study.
and I will say, I think it's fallacious. I think it's total nonsense, and I'd use a stronger word if we were it on the label, but I'm not qualified to make that
Hmm.
judgment. I'm not a senior physician with experience in this field, but the author of the paper, Dr. Lee, cited by the White House, said association is not causation. And the second part of the story is they want to test out, quote, if the association was causal.
Hmm.
Now, again, quoting the doctor whose study was cited by the White House, the children born to mothers who use Tylenol, these mothers are different in many ways from mothers who didn't use Tylenol, you mentioned. There are indications for use, headaches, infections, fevers, that have been plausibly associated with autism and other conditions in the past. And these are what we call confounders, the third factor that might explain an association. One of the examples I use in the classroom to explain confounding is eating ice cream and the risk of drowning. And the idea here is that ice cream is statistically associated with the risk of drowning.
How's that
Uh,
work, Dave?
this is me. I'm not quoting this one. Well, a whole lot of people on the beach eat ice cream.
Okay. But now, Dave, we're about out of time. I want you to tell me about Tilly Norwood.
Tilly Norwood. What did I sent you her picture? What does
Yes, you
she look
did.
like?
Attractive looking young lady.
And she's a actor being shopped around Hollywood to get roles, presumably fairly sexy roles.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't exist.
What?
She is entirely created by AI. The Actors Guild is screaming, and I
But
have
she
to
has an
quote them.
agent, Dave. She has an agent that's shopping her, correct? For roles in
Uh,
Hollywood.
one of they're shopping her two agents when I look more closely at the story. And one of those agents said, it's definitely going to be an agent selling her, selling her. It is technically possible to do somebody who convincingly shows up as a hologram in front of a stadium full of concert goers and looks real. That's hard and expensive. It's now possible for any competent graphics artist to make somebody so close to an actor that Hollywood is thinking of using them instead.
Wow.
And I can tell you the technology is there and it works pretty well.
Sure, their fees are going to be a lot less than the Hollywood stars. Anyway, you heard it here on Comedian Technology. Thank you, Dave. It's been Dave Burstein and Stu Reed on WHR 90.3 FM and on the web at WHCR.org, streaming live every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Tune in. You just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.